Dave Reichert.
The only question off limits is, don't ask my birthday. I think that's actually public knowledge, so it's a question that doesn't need to be asked. So first of all, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your life to be involved and engaged. And a part of the process. And I know it's not just tonight that you meet, and this is a constant thing. Sometimes your phone is ringing off the hook, I know, and especially during an election season, and especially one so important as this year. I know that it's just not about being here tonight. So thank you for taking time away from your families and friends and being involved and engaged in the process. And thank you for inviting me to speak to you tonight. So I'd like to start off with a little bit about myself. Most of you know my name because of the Green River case, but there's a lot more to me than the Green River case. And somebody's already so impressed they fell to the floor. Or they got bored, fell asleep, and I just started, which is more likely the case. So I do like to share a little bit about myself because you don't always get to hear about a person's personal life, and I think it's important to share. And I want to be open and honest with you and let you know how I got here and why I'm running and the issues that are facing us today. I am the oldest of 7. And, oh, by the way, Brenda, thank you. If I was the sheriff, I would hire her today. She would be one of my chiefs.
Former sergeant.
Yeah, I know, see, right? I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I grew up in the Renton Highlands, and the boys slept in the garage. It was first started out in the duplex, and kind of a tough upbringing. Just one little incident. I had lots of things. People mostly said, my brothers and sisters especially, that SHIT followed me around during my life. I was kidnapped when I was 10 years old by three guys that were over 20 years old. Me and a couple of buddies. You know, back in the old days, you used to take your paper sack lunch and go on a hike, you know, build a camp. Well, they grabbed us, took our shirts off, tied us to a tree, and whipped us with branches, tree branches. And I was able to escape. Now, I share these stories because these kinds of things that happen to you, you can all think of stuff that happens to you in your life that affect you later on. It starts to build the person who you are, right? I was the protector of my younger brothers and sisters, not only in that neighborhood, but also then as we grew older and the family started to fall apart. I grew up in a family of domestic violence. My dad was quite a drinker and was violent. I have some physical scars on my body to prove the battles between the two of us. It wasn't just emotional, it became pretty physical. So I ran away when I was 16 years old. And I lived in a 1956 Mercury. Now some of us with senior citizen wrinkles on our face will know what a 1956 Mercury looks like. Younger people may have to Google 1956 Mercury to figure out. Had a nice flat, big back seat that was fairly comfortable. And I actually stayed at a dead-end road down by the Green River. Yeah. Isn't that weird? I was very fortunate, though. I was a little bit talented, played some sports in school. Football was my sport, and basketball. A coach saw me playing a game. I'm dyslexic, had trouble in school, not only because of that, but because I was living out of the car, just trying to survive. And he saw me playing football. He came down to the field, asked me if I'd like to play at a small junior college in Oregon. I said, I don't have any money and my grades don't meet the criteria. They weighed those 2 things. And that's the first time not the first time, but one of the moments in my life where I knew God had a plan in my life. Because I was not going to college on my own. We had no money. I was headed to work where my father was working, and he started out at the car shops. Here's another curiosity. later turned out to be Kenworth Trucking. Over in Gary Ridgeway. So Pacific Car Foundry became Kenworth Trucking. So they covered my tuition, and they told me as long as I got my grades up, I could continue to play football and basketball at Concordia Lutheran University in Portland. Fortunately for me, I met my wife 2 weeks into being at Concordia, and she's the one who helped me pass all my classes. So she was the 3.8 student. I was not. We got married as soon as we were done with 2 years of college and joined the Air Force Reserve, spent about 6-7 months active duty, left the Air Force, went right into the sheriff's office as I turned 21 years old. That's what I wanted to do, and I knew it. And just that one story I told you, and how I grew up, protecting my brothers and sisters, really is my motivation. I wanted to help, I wanted to serve, I wanted to make a difference. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what is driving me today. I want to help, I want to serve, and I want to make a difference. That's all. That's all I want to do. I'm driven by a heart to serve. And I'm driven by the way that this government right now is being run in Washington State. I'm sick and tired of a government that does not listen to us. It doesn't hear us, and it doesn't care, lies to us. And we're going to fix that. And I say we, not me. We are going to fix that. I left, I spent 5 years on the street, and a little over 5 years as a deputy, worked in the jail for a little while. There's some stories in the jail I could tell you about. I wanted to share one story with you that kind of illustrates what cops are going through today. Some in here may be in law enforcement, some may have family members that are in law enforcement. Some may be retired and might bring back some bad memories, but when I was 22 years old, I went to a domestic violence call. I was familiar with domestic violence because I grew up in a home of domestic violence. When I arrived, however, in this case, the husband had his wife by the throat, and he had a knife to her throat in the picture window of their small house and just off of 312th and 1st Avenue Southwest in Federal Way. I snuck in a bedroom window, went down the hallway, and was peeking around the edge of the wall, waiting for him to drop the knife. There was an empty bottle of wine, so I knew he'd been drinking. But I also knew that he'd had a mental health problem because he was standing in the front yard, and neighbors had told us right before we arrived with a belt that was wrapped in aluminum foil. He was receiving messages from, I was the first satellite. I didn't know. He was getting reception from the wrong person. His message was kill his wife, kill the first cop. So I didn't wait. I ran around the corner, grabbed her, threw her out the window that I came in, and when I turned around, he was right on me. He went out into the hallway. I fell over the coffee table. Between the coffee table and the couch, he jumped on top of me, slit my throat 3 times, 45 stitches in my neck. Came down with a knife to stab me right here. I caught the knife with my hands like this, like you see in the movies, and I had a little U-shaped scar here right on my Adam's apple where the tip of the knife was stopped. Now, that's just one of many stories I could tell, but that's a life and death story. That's a life and death story that our police officers today experience. Not every day, not every cop, but across this country. And they're not getting the support they deserve. Appreciate that, thank you. And they're not getting the support they deserve, and they're putting their life on the line every day for us. So I went through patrol, went into detectives, became a homicide detective, and I ended up working the Green River case. I was assigned the first body of the Green River case. That's why my name and face is associated with the case, because I was the first detective, first body, and made the lead detective for the entire investigation. So it was closed down 9 years later because they said we weren't going to solve the case, and it was costing too much money. That's the reason they gave up. I didn't give up, and neither did the rest of the detectives. It took a team. My face might be on the TV and on some of the documentaries, but we had a team of 75 to 100 people that worked on that case. I was promoted out of there to sergeant, went to Burien White Center, left there, ended up as the SWAT commander, was also a hostage negotiator. I'll tell you that maybe some of you have heard me say this, being a hostage negotiator in Congress came in very handy. But also, I found that being a SWAT commander came in very handy. Because there's a time to kick in the door. And I want to tell you that right now, this year, this is the time we kick in the door. There's a crack in the door, and all we need to do is we've got to be the SWAT team that's ready. When this year, as we run this campaign, as we run this election, we have got to get people together. We have got to build a team across this state in order for us to kick that damn door down and take that governor's mansion and change this state. My last 8 years I spent as sheriff. Some of you might know at WTO. I was fortunate enough to be in a spot where 4 guys had just kicked in the Radio Shack, and I chased them down the street. King 5 happened to have a TV camera there. I don't know if some of you have seen the footage. I decided I was going to chase these crooks down the street. At 49 years old, I'm lucky I didn't pull a hamstring. Because these were 16, 17-year-old kids, but they got caught later. Seattle PD caught them later. But that was a time where they needed leadership. We had 500,000 people riding in the streets, ladies and gentlemen. 500,000 people in the streets of Seattle. And I was told by the police chief and the mayor, we don't need your help. And I said, oh yes you will. You'll need our help. In fact, what I did is I put 350 deputies in the basement of the courthouse on Sunday. On Monday afternoon, when you know what hit the fan, I opened up the garage doors and I marched 350 King County deputies out onto 3rd Avenue. And we kicked you know what. And then I got a phone call from the mayor and said, and I'm telling you this because this should remind you what's happening today. The mayor calls me and says, stop making arrests. We're not making arrests. This is just free speech. And I said, I'm the sheriff, and we have concurrent jurisdiction, and we're making arrests. So guess what happened? Seattle started making arrests. WSP started making arrests. It's called leadership. We were doing the right thing, enforcing the law. And today, we are blaming victims, excusing criminals. We are not enforcing the law. We need to enforce the law. I can't even believe that I have to say the number one thing we need to do in Washington State to make us safe and make our kids safe and our community safe is to enforce the law. It's common sense. When someone told me, common sense is not so common anymore, right? So I left the sheriff's office. Jennifer Dunn was, many of you knew Jennifer Dunn, was a hard act to follow. She came to me and asked me, please run for Congress. And I said, no, at least 6 times. She was persistent. I finally said yes, so I ran for Congress in 2004 for the first time. We won. We beat Dave Ross, the Cairo Radio News commentator. It was a tough race. 51, 52%, I think. And thereafter, it was about as close every 2 years. We stayed for 14 years. By the time I left the 8th district, we had 60% in 2019. And Dina Rossi came in and ran, and that district had turned D, even though we split across the mountain. Dina Rossi came in, and I forget his numbers, Jeff, 48. And that's about as high as we've been able to get since then. So we've won 9 races. I've not lost a race. And I'll tell you, I am not going to lose this one. say we are going to lose this one. I left, when I was in Congress, I was the chairman of the Emergency Preparedness Subcommittee in my first 3 months in Congress. That's only happened 6 times in history. The other person that I'm going to mention that you might recognize the name on that list of 6 is Richard Nixon. He was one of those. I don't know if that's a good thing to mention or not. 4 years of that, 10 years, my last 10 years on Ways and Means. And I was the chairman of the Trade Committee, which is critical to Washington State. 40% of the jobs in Washington State are due to trade. I helped negotiate the Korean trade agreement, Japan trade agreement, Colombian trade agreement, and the Panama trade agreement while I was in Congress. I also chaired the tax subcommittee, and I also chaired the human resources subcommittee, which all of those subcommittees now relate to what's facing us today in the state of Washington and add on the law enforcement experience. When Jay Inslee announced that he was retiring, and he looked over at, what's his name? We're going to call him, what's his name? He's a has-been, right? After this year, he's going to be a has-been. He looked over and he said, I look forward to handing the keys to the governor's office over to the next Democrat. That offended me, and it should have offended you too. It's a sense of entitlement that they have. This is a democracy. We vote for the people that we want to hold these offices. We have a chance to kick that door down. I'm going to keep saying that over and over. We have a chance to kick that door down. My phone started ringing off the hook. I was happy over in Chelan. I'd retired. I was working part-time. I was actually working in Central America, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, and I was working on human trafficking. And I spent, so that was 5 years, and I was also working on a technology called rapid DNA. I won't get into the details of that, but under the Trump administration, that machine was being used on the border. I'm going to tell you how it was being used. It's not being used today, but it was back then. And it was being used for the really specific to people who were coming up to the border and had a child in tow and said, my name is Joe Blow, and this is my son or my daughter. Well, with this machine in 90 minutes, we can swab Joe, find out if Joe is really Joe, but we can also swab Cindy and find out if she is related to Joe in 90 minutes. And if she's not, the databases that we were building in South America, we could actually send that DNA profile to Guatemala, for example, and send the child back to the family. That's not happening. I'm speaking a little bit longer tonight because I really want you to get to know who I am. So now that you kind of know some of the history, quickly went through some of the stories and some of the things that influenced my life, affected my thought process, and my determination and my conservative Christian values. My grandfather was a Lutheran pastor. There's a Lutheran in the crowd. And yeah, you know, he wanted me to be a Lutheran pastor. I took 2 years of German down there, which I didn't do too bad. I got B's in that class. But I saw my roommates doing Hebrew and Greek, and I said, there's no way, and you know what, that I'm going to go become a pastor, having to take Hebrew and Greek. Anyway, so you get an idea of who I am and why I am where I am today. And when I look at the things that I've been blessed to do in my life, it's put me at a time and place right now today with you here tonight, where we look at the issues that are facing us. Number one, criminal justice system. It's absolutely, it's not just broken, it's falling apart. It's just totally falling apart. Again, blaming victims, excusing criminals. Number one thing, enforce the law. Number two, now first I'll say, there is some legislation that's being proposed that would give law enforcement officers a signing bonus. But I know cops, and I've talked to cops, pay is just fine. And we have the lowest number per capita in the nation. You already know this, 51, we're 51, including DC, of the number of police officers. King County's down about 150. I think Spokane told me yesterday when I was over there, I think they were down 40, 50. We're in bad shape. But there's things that we can do to attract cops. One, we've got to stop passing laws that allow people to sue them personally, take their homes, take their cars. So we have to elect people that understand that. They're going to make decisions that are life and death decisions. It's not like putting the wrong nut in the wrong place in the wrong, on the, in a mechanic shop. Sometimes, yes, airplane door, it is kind of like putting it on there. There's a Boeing employee over here on the right. Woodford in the back, a Boeing employee over here. Who goes to work like this, please God, let me put the bolt in the door. You don't work for Boeing, do you? Oh, okay, good. There probably are some Boeing workers over here. Oh, he does. Yeah, but you're not responsible for doors. Oh, yeah, it's a blessing that no one was hurt or killed in that event. Where was I?
One was
Oh, yes,
justice.
and two is, if you've watched Pierce County lately, and I know you have because most of you live here, they can be charged with a crime. And they can be the ones that are the criminals. They go to jail instead of the other way around. The criminals don't get them. And I'm going to say number 4 is I'm really frustrated with the parole board.
Yeah.
They have released 30 to 35% of our inmates from our prisons, and before they've served their time, it doesn't matter if they're good behavior or not, they've decided to release prisoners onto the street. And what do they do when they come out? They commit crime, which makes it worse for police officers who are now not only having to control their communities and protect their communities from the people that live there, but now they're releasing criminals back into their communities that they have to deal with all over again. Just today, we hear about a shooting that happened over in Seattle. I saw a young lady that was testifying on TV at a news conference that she was attacked at Point Defiance, at High Point, and brutally beaten and stabbed. These things have got to stop. And here's what I would do with the parole board. Fire them all. That's just a few things in law enforcement. I could go on for a little bit. The second thing is what people call homelessness. What is it really?
Drug addiction.
Yeah, substance abuse and mental illness. Yep. Those two things need to be addressed. And guess who I saw on TV today saying we've made such great progress? Did you guys see that? Yeah, initials J.I. Yeah, he was at the homeless. It's curious enough, he was at the same homeless encampment I was at just a few weeks ago. And every TV station covered it. Me talking to the homeless people along I-5 at the University of Washington. I spent 8 hours from Burien to Tukwila to downtown Seattle to University District and talking to homeless people all day. We've got other events like that set up where I can learn more about how we can. There are some good things happening in providing services to some of these people. And these are agencies out there working on their own, like the Union Gospel Mission. They have a great program in place. All we need to do is duplicate that program. You've got to walk with these people. It's going to take a while to get these people off drugs and get them mentally straight so they can be put in a halfway house and reconnected with their family and get a job. One of the things I liked about Union Gospel Mission is that they have this tiered program. They take them in, they interview them, And if they can stay off drugs for 2 or 3 weeks and then take them upstairs, they've got 2 or 3 months up here and give them what they call job therapy, which is one of the simplest pieces of job therapy, which I would try and implement this statewide, is that they have to learn that there is a night and a day. You get up at 8 o'clock and you have a responsibility. You get up and you make your bed. You get up, make your bed, and you have breakfast. You get up, make your bed, have breakfast, and mop the floor. You have jobs and responsibilities throughout the day, and then at night the light goes out. They have to relearn all of these things because they've been living on the street. So we've got to address the mental illness and the drug substance abuse issues first, and then help them move into homes. There are facilities available for us today where we can house the mentally ill and the substance abuse people and surround them with social services and help them move through this process. But you can't just provide them with a home and expect them to get better by themselves. It ain't gonna happen, and that's where we've been wasting our money in this state. I met with a group of CEOs in Seattle a few weeks ago. One particular large business in our state told me they spent $780 million in 1 year on homelessness. I asked him, how did that go? And he said it was a waste of money. So he and I talked about public-private partnerships and how we might be able to work together. So people ask, how can you fund these things? We've got businesses in this state that make so much money that can donate that money to the cause to help these people, and we can clean up our streets and make it safer, keep our businesses in Washington State, because they're closing down because people are urinating and defecating in the doorways of their businesses, and they close down and they move out, and where do they go? Idaho, Florida, Texas, Montana. They're not staying here. We can change that. Number 3. Economy. So, in the economy, what is the number one thing you think is driving prices up today here in Washington State?
Fuel.
Thank you. Yes, it's the gas, it's the carbon gas tax. So, right now, in the legislation that was passed, the one thing that you could do, the governor can do right now, is hit the button to stop that gas tax right now. He has that power to do that, right? It's in the law. It's not an executive order, it's in the law. All he has to do is say, this is a burden on the people of Washington State, and I'm gonna stop this gas tax right now. He can do that. I'm gonna do that in January. What that causes is an opportunity for us then to have a conversation with the Democrats who will be running the House and the Senate. So I want to talk a little bit of reality real quick here. So you'll have a Republican governor. The number one power that the governor will have is the veto. So you can bet every tax bill that comes through, it's a veto, it's a veto, it's a veto, it's a veto. What happens when we start vetoing some of the bills, this bad legislation that affects our taxes, that affects our education, it affects our police officers, it affects everything that we buy in this state? The Democrats are going to be forced to come and say, we want to get something done, how can we work with you? And also, secondly, what it does is it gives our Republican members of the House and Senate an opportunity. Now they will have some power, they will have a voice, they will have some authority, because they'll have a governor that's going to back them up in producing legislation. We're going to have hard votes for these Democrats to take. The governor, the third thing the governor can do is present his own legislation and work with our Republican friends in the House and Senate to get those pieces of legislation passed. Now, I'm not saying that we'll be successful, but they're going to have to take some hard votes. And just like the 6 initiatives that Steve Gordon and Brian Haywood have put forth, and all of you have signed, and I've signed, and we all support. In fact, the majority of people living in Washington State, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, support these 6 initiatives. That's the kind of stuff that we can promote and push from the governor's office. That's how we're going to start to turn this ship around. That's how we're going to start to change this state. The last thing I want to mention is education. And in this state, we spend $19,000 per student. One of the highest in the country, $19,000 per student. I know one of the pieces of legislation that's been presented by one of our representatives is to take part of that 19 grand, 500 or 1,000, I forget what the figure is, and give it to parents so they can hire tutors to help their child catch up from the COVID shutdown. That's it's a drop in the bucket, but it's an effort. The second thing that I would support that. The second thing that I would support is a move to get charter schools. And that's, we started that process and then it came to a halt. But that's another piece of legislation that the governor and the Republican members can work together on and try to push through. Parents should have a choice on where they want. And I support the idea of that backpack idea that I think it's Arizona, where your tax dollars go with your child to the school that you choose, right? Because our children also, the next thought would be, why don't we teach science and math,
Civics.
and history, right? Biology, the subjects that we know our young people need to learn to be successful in our society. And the other, I know 5599 was passed, and Steve and Brian again done a great job in bringing that parental rights initiative forward. Those initiatives are going to drive voters in November. Some of them I know they're thinking about having a hearing on. They're in a little bit of a quandary right now, the Democrats are. What do we do with these? Do we allow them to go forward and vote on them in November because they know it's going to drive the vote, which would be good for all of us? There's three things we can do to win. I'll end with this. Number one, make sure the elections are fair. Right? I know that Jim Walsh and team is working on that. All of you some of you here might be a part of that. I know one of the things they want to do is buy ballot boxes that are official ballot boxes and put them in places where conservative voters go. Where might some of those places be? Churches. How about a gun range? Who tried to steal a ballot from a gun range? How about a gun shop? Right? Places like that where we know we can protect our votes. Number two is on you. Number two is on you. What is that? Vote. And I know people in here are going to vote, but we got to get other people out to vote. We got to get our friends, relatives, neighbors, all of them. We got to have the energy to say, I'm going to take you to go register to vote. This is how we're going to win. You got to get fired up. You got to get people in your neighborhood. You got to get your family fired up. And you got to tell them, look, it's now or never. We can do this. Get them involved. Get them registered to vote. And get them to the ballot. Turn in that ballot. That's up to you and me. I talked to a young man that's serving in the military at the Joint Base. He's not registered. I said, what the heck? You've been to Afghanistan, you fought for our rights to vote, and you're not registered? So I'm going to grab him by the back, and then after one day, we're going to go down. You can do it online now, right? Make sure it's fair. Number two, it's on you. Number three, and this is the one that some of us don't think about. For us in Washington State, what do we have to do to win? Who do we have to get to vote for us?
Everybody.
We're going to have to get some independents and moderates. In the latest poll that came out, we're already attracting 48% of that undecided moderate vote. That's 32% to Ferguson, 48% us. And we're going to get the rest. And that's what we got to do to win. And when we get in there, then we're going to start making some changes. that we're going to start showing our conservative ideas. We're going to start showing people in this state conservative ideas are good, and they help people. Change the state for the better. Thank you guys for listening to me. Appreciate it.